that time of year again. It is Mercury retrograde season. This video is here to give you an explanation of what Mercury retrograde is about, what to expect with this Mercury retrograde, which in sidereal and Vedic astrology will be moving backwards through Cancer. I really want to pull out key dates to work with, as well as give you some hints and tips as to how to use Mercury retrograde to its full potential, because it does have potential. Now, this particular Mercury retrograde will go from the 18th of July to the 11th of August. It does have a shadow phase that happens before it, around 2.5 weeks before Mercury goes retrograde. We're kind of getting hints as to what's going to come up. And then 2.5 weeks after Mercury stations direct, it also has a shadow phase, which is when it's going back over the places it's been retrograde. And so you can find in the 2.5 weeks after the 11th of August, some things start to get ironed out. Some things start to make sense that were happening during Mercury retrograde. Now, let's start. What is Mercury retrograde? Okay, so Mercury retrograde, it happens each year about 3 to 4 times a year. And it's simply from the perspective of the Earth, it looks as though Mercury is moving backwards in the sky. What is happening is it's like Mercury moves a little bit ahead of the sun and then it stations retrograde in order to catch back up to the sun because it's never too far from the sun. Now, when Mercury is retrograde, it's a total wild card. It essentially means that the planet's energy is not operating the way it normally does. And Mercury rules the throat chakra. It, it rules communication. It rules perception. It kind of has a bit of a role with the Ajna chakra. Rules perception. It rules commerce, technology, but more like technology that has a communicative energy to it. It's like a lower order energy from Uranus, is often how it's thought about. It rules contracts, it rules things that are written, things that are spoken. And when it's a wild card kind of energy during its retrograde cycle, its energy is disturbed and it's working in the reverse manner to how it normally would. Now, the only people this is going to benefit are if you have Mercury natally retrograde in your chart, and you can see that doesn't matter in Western or in Vedic astrology, it will be the same. There'll be a little R next to Mercury telling you it's retrograde, which it means this period coming up is one where you feel at home. You know this energy. This is what you're about. But for everyone else, it feels incredibly uncomfortable. It feels like we're having to deal with things from the past coming back up. Now, the energy of Mercury retrograde, it's introverted, it's backwards, it brings things up from the past, which is why it's often associated with people from like our exes or people we might have had a crush on in the past or had some kind of romantic involvement coming back up. That tends to be notoriously what happens during a retrograde season. And the biggest mistake you can make with that is thinking that it's somehow back on, because it's more about them delivering a message, teaching us something that maybe wasn't resolved from that relationship so that we can move on. The energy can also feel really unexpected, things coming out of the blue. Um, I often feel like Mercury retrograde it feels like you say something to someone else and they hear something entirely different, which is kind of what normally happens, but even more so. So we want to be really careful, considered in our language and in what we say, but also we want to be open to the fact that Mercury's gonna Mercury. There's gonna be an element of chaos that's going on, and it's really forcing us to be flexible. It's forcing us to deal with uncomfortable situations, whether we want them or not. And one of the things to remember with Mercury is actually like the Joker or the jester of the zodiac. So even though things can feel chaotic, there is laughter from the universe underneath it all. There's like a cosmic joke it's wanting you to get. And when we get to laugh with the universe, it's total joy. Doesn't mean, I mean, we have to kind of work through it to get to that place. Now, Mercury retrograde is like an exam. So you've been studying, you've been having conversations over the last quarter. And as Mercury stations retrograde, it's like, okay, so did you learn? Like, we're going to test you on what you've just gone through. And we're going to see if you understood, or if there's parts, conversations that maybe weren't complete, if there was communication that maybe you you need to learn more. We're going to give you that practical exam, and that's what this is about. So think of it that way. It's really a chance to wrap up energy. Mercury in Vedic astrology is very much associated with endings, with the closing out of old knowledge, of psychology, of a way of being. And so the opportunity of a Mercury retrograde is to close something out. And it's very personal. It's very much related to our own wisdom. Now, the general guide for what to do and not do during Mercury retrograde. And this is my own guide, but obviously experiment. Why not? We're here on Earth School. I generally try not to book long distance travel when I'm in Mercury retrograde. I'll do it around Mercury retrograde, and it's fine to travel during Mercury retrograde as well. Just not booking a travel. Try not to sign contracts, because often you can miss the fine print of what's going on, of like something gets put into the contract that you couldn't see before. If you can, wait until after the 11th of August. Don't buy electronics, expensive ones anyway. And don't make a big purchase, because often there's a contract involved in things like buying a house or buying a car. It's generally a time like I would wait until after Mercury retrograde to do that. Now, the just general stuff is like double check what you write in emails, double check who you're sending the email to, because there's a chance that like the communication goes to someone it wasn't meant for, and you might also be on the receiving end of that. Double check the messages you send. And if there's something really important in terms of long-term planning, like something you're thinking about for the future, Mercury retrograde's not really a time to do that. It's more a time to consolidate what you've learned from the past. So, what is Mercury in Cancer all about, which is where it's going to be? So, the entirety of Mercury retrograde is going to be in Cancer, in sidereal astrology, so in astronomically correct astrology. And Cancer deals with belongings, it deals with privacy, protection, the feeling of being at home, dealing with family, particularly the mother or maternal like figures, people we care for and protect. So, this is really the realm that we're in, the people we live with, the family we've grown up with, our mother, that maternal energy. It's also deeply emotional as a sign. And Mercury is not a planet we associate with emotion, but when its logic gets put into Cancer, which it does not like, we need to like moon, and the moon, which rules Cancer, and Mercury don't necessarily love being together because it tends to lead to an overactive mind. And this can happen when Mercury gets put in the moon sign of Cancer. So it can be hard. There can be a lot going inside, like a lot of emotion, and it wants to bubble up. It wants to be spoken about, but it's moving so quickly and it's so mercurial. It's really not a time where we've got a fixed idea of what's going on, because we can find we're changing our mind with our emotions. We're going to be dealing with topics like codependence, particularly if there are any codependent relationships we have within the home we live within, or with our mother, or with family members, or kind of like around that energy. We're also going to be dealing with questions around how we were nurtured, how we nurture ourselves, what we want to grow within our home life, how we love and how we care for other people. Now, that means you can find people from the past popping up around your home, people you've lived with previously, old loves you might have lived with, um, family you might not have spoken to in a while, your mother popping up in weird and wonderful ways, even if she's passed, like in dreams, because Mercury will travel into every realm to get us what we need. And also, energy with people really around our sense of belonging, people that bring that sense of like, I don't belong or I don't fit in up. And it's really the opportunity to put that stuff to bed. Now, you're going to have hints of what that was about. If you go back to the 30th of June, we started Mercury's shadow phase. So between the 30th and the 18th, Mercury is kind of warming up. It's tracing over the degrees of Cancer that it's going to run back over. So you can find that there were already themes popping up around the home, around your family, around where you feel at home. And even questions like, even if you don't know where you feel at home, great. Mercury retrograde is going to help you. So when I'm thinking about this retrograde period, I'm breaking it down into two phases, and that's based on the Nakshatras or the lunar mansions that Mercury will be moving through. The first phase is the most difficult, and that's going to be from the 18th of July to the 29th of July, and that's when Mercury is in Ashleesha Nakshatra. It is difficult. Ashleesha means to embrace, and it's the claw of the crab that Mercury's running through. And so here we are dealing with codependence. We're dealing with things that we hold on to really, really tightly and we cannot let go of. This also is a nakshatra, part of Cancer, which deals with poisons that sit in the mind. So our thoughts that kind of disturb us. And a lot of these come from past lives that we've spent with the people in our family or that we live with. And we want to be really careful between the 18th of July and the 29th of July with what we say, because it's very easy for those kind of inner toxins to leak out into words. And we can think we're really righteous or we're really right with what we have to say, but we actually will end up hurting someone. And there can be really long-term effects to the hurt that we inflict. So be very, very, very careful. Um, like I said, although, well, this part of Mercury retrograde can feel like the hardest part. It's like sitting the hardest part of the exam. It's really a part where we get humbled. It's a part where we've got to slow things down. It's a part where we need to not say and not voice every thought that comes into the mind. Um, but it's also going to be big growth. So particularly for someone that wants to go beyond their own limiting beliefs. So, this is going to bring up the ways we feel limited, and it can feel really confusing. So, just be careful. This is also a lunar mansion that deals with deception and cunning. So, be wary of where you're telling little lies. And equally, where someone or you sense someone else is doing the same or trying to get the upper hand or not fully telling you the truth. And it's not about calling someone out. It's just about acknowledging that there's a reason they're doing that. There's a reason that they might not feel comfortable speaking the truth, and that's their own stuff. Just as you might find that, like, telling little white lies is also something that makes you feel comfortable. Now, like I said, Mercury will feel really uncomfortable here. It needs help from you to feel safe. You can find you need to put in a little bit of extra effort to help yourself feel nurtured. And it can easily turn situations which are actually very neutral into things that it perceives as negative. So just notice how the mind does that. Be really careful of handling conversations correctly, not venting your venom to someone else. Like I said before, it will have really big impacts over a long period of time if you do. Particularly, do not put it in an email. If you're frustrated and annoyed at someone during this period or something that's happening during this period, put it in a journal, keep it to yourself. Like fume, let that anger up, question the thought. Find a close confidant to talk about it. Don't react by sending an email to someone or sending a message to someone or calling them. It won't help. It's about you learning about what that's bringing up within you and seeing them as doing you a service because they're bringing it up for you. Now, within this period that Mercury's in Ashleesha, from the 18th to the 24th, so like just the first little bit of it, it's in a part of Ashleesha which is ruled by Capricorn. So it can be very karmic, it can be very serious, the conversation can be very serious, and it can actually be a little bit easier to be considered in what you say. Like, you're not just going to run your mouth, like, it's a little bit easier to hold that back. You want to really note during that period, the 18th to 24th, where you're being a little bit too dependent on others for approval. Be careful of the advice you give and receive. Um, And because Capricorn opposes Cancer, you can find that a lot of what's coming up during this first period is really one-on-one conversations. Conversations with business partners, conversations one-on-one within your work or with someone that you're in a long-term relationship with or you have a soul contract with. You can also find that there's really big spiritual lessons in this for you. You can find that there's a lot of energy around the patriarchy that comes up to play where you get to see how you enact it yourself. Now, the 24th to the 29th, Mercury is still in Ashleesha, but it's in a part of Ashleesha which is ruled by Sagittarius. This can let things feel a little bit more expansive. It can be a period where you're starting to access more wisdom and higher knowledge and what you've been learning starts to really drop in. That said, there are going to be obstacles like 24th to 29th. There will be obstacles on this path, even facing people who are your enemy or working with your body if you feel run down, really resting. And also seeing something, no, that enemy could show up as the body because it won't do what you want it to do. So just pay attention to that. I really feel between the 24th and the 29th, there's the opportunity to end something that's been playing out. Like you getting the wisdom from what Mercury retrograde showing you, and it's time for that to be drawn to a close. There's a big spiritual lesson there. Then phase two of Mercury retrograde is 29th of July to the 11th of August. And this is a little bit easier. Mercury will enter Pushya, Nakshatra, which is the middle of Cancer. It includes the beehive cluster, which sits right in the middle of Cancer constellation. And this should make things easier because Pushya is a very auspicious nakshatra. It's very nourishing. And we're going to have the opportunity for really immense spiritual development and growth. It's much softer than Ashleesha. There's not so much venom wanting to come out. This is more about receiving the mother's milk, receiving what we need to nurture. Um, that said, the restriction during the period from the 29th of July to the 11th of August will be around the timing in which you want things done. Saturn is playing a big role during this period. And he's really saying, like, not now. Like, the timing comes later. It can feel like if there are ideas that you want to progress, or if it just feels like I've been waiting forever. When is the universe going to give me a break? Just notice if that comes up during this period. You won't get what you want during this period. It will be delayed, but not denied. It's coming soon. Now, Mercury here is really drawn towards the spiritual. That's what it wants. It wants to access higher wisdom, which can be quite hard for the logical mind to do. But it can bring about expansive and innovative thinking, and even solutions to problems that were going on before the 29th that you just couldn't get to the bottom of. It's moving you outside of your normal way of dealing with problems. Now, between the 29th of July and the 3rd of August, the part of Pusha that Mercury will be in is ruled by Scorpio or Mars. And so it can be a little bit difficult. So, although there's nourishment, although there's a sense of flow coming through, there's still some difficulty. It can feel a little bit restrictive. Um, and it can actually call for you to get to the bottom of a challenging situation you actually haven't wanted to. You've kind of just wanted to put off or just sweep under the rug. There's almost a call like you really need, this is the lesson. This is what you need to get to the bottom of. Old emotions can surface, so be really careful with your own addictive behaviors. Like if you find when things get emotional, you run for food or you run for a drink or a smoke or other drugs, just be really aware because there's the opportunity for that to come up quite strongly. Give yourself what you need when emotions coming up. Allow yourself to feel it instead of switching off. It can be very emotionally intense and can deal a lot with conversations around money, finances, your sense of worth and value. Now, Mercury retrograde is going to finish with a period from the 3rd of August to the 11th of August, which is ruled by Libra or Venus. So we're really, it's a little bit easier, to be honest. But we're really dealing with material issues. We're getting to the practicality of the season. We're getting to what all that emotion was about. So it's talking about relationships, it's talking about balance, it's talking about giving and receiving, and just letting people know that. And it feels like the 3rd to the 11th, this energy is more focused on friendships, on social groups, and even what you're seeing at a humanitarian level. You can find that there's something during this time that you need to prune, so that something new can grow. There's something that needs to be like lopped off, removed, so that something new can come. And there can be a lot of responsibilities and relationships that you're forced to work with and come to resolution around. So that's the kind of the lay of the land. Now, the one date within this that I really like is the Cazimi, and the Cazimi will be on the 1st of August, and that's when the Sun and Mercury retrograde meet. Now, that means they're going to be meeting in Pushya, Nakshatra, which is great. Now, Cazimi is a time where we can get to the bottom of what Mercury retrograde is teaching us. It can show us, like, this is exactly what this has been about. So it can be a beautiful day to journal, to kind of like gain insight into what you've been processing. And equally, if there's a contract you have to sign, if there is a purchase you have to make, you can use that date to do it. I know it's not accepted logic, but I often like to think of it as the sun is burning through the energy of Mercury retrograde, so it's giving us a little break. And therefore the rules of Mercury retrograde don't necessarily apply. So I hope you enjoy this video describing what's going on with Mercury retrograde, and I'm wishing you the best for its ingress, for its period of transit through Cancer.